Budget blues. Will cuts give new meaning to the term thin blue line? Then we go red to discuss the war on lithium-ion battery fires. The Point starts right now. Brooklyn Councilman Justin Brannan just prevailed in a hard-fought battle to keep his seat. And now the head of the Council Finance Committee is the man in the middle of the city's fiscal crisis. But, Councilman, you didn't even have time to have like a victory lap or savor your victory, and now here you are. The mayor introduces a new budget modification where the headline is cops to fall to $29,000, which, as we both know, is the lowest since the 1990s. Yeah. What's a poor chairman of the Finance Committee to do?
Well, this is the life I chose, you know, so, the day after the election, it's just time to get back to work. And being chair of the Finance Committee has a lot of responsibility, and it's an honor for me to serve as chair. And it's not always easy, and this is a time where it's going to be tough, and we're going to have to make some tough decisions.
So this is a $4 billion cut, and that's just 5%, and there's going to be another 5% come January if these all go through. What will the city look like if these cuts are allowed to go through?
Well, that's a great question. Look, a couple things. I think first and foremost, the budget gaps we're facing now are not necessarily a surprise. These are out-year gaps that we've been warning about for quite a while. A lot of it has to do with finally the end of the COVID stimulus money. That money we've been warning has been running out. Now it's actually running out for real, in addition to the cost related to the migrant influx. So there's a gap that needs to be bridged, and it's very real. However, there's a couple of things at play here. Number one, we've been using a lot of temporary, even the prior administration used a lot of temporary money to prop up and expand permanent programs. And obviously when you use temporary money for permanent things,
something's got to give.
There's a cliff. So there's a fiscal cliff now, in addition to the migrant cost. The biggest issue here is that the administration has relied way too much on emergency contracts with for-profit companies that are just billing the city whatever they want. They're billing
expensive hotels.
They're billing us billions of dollars. When there's a whole group of nonprofit groups, nonprofit organizations that are here in New York doing work with immigrants and migrants that we really, I think, should have been relying on from day one.
How much could we save?
No one knows. We're going to know now. We're going to find out. Basically, the council has been asking the mayor, the administration, for a plan and a full accounting for how much they've been spending on migrants for almost over a year. And the only answer we really get is more cuts. And we're not going to finance a migrant crisis with cuts. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't mention.
What you're saying is, if you can't do it with cuts, you either need more aid from Washington or Albany, or, dare I say it, you have to raise taxes.
So no layoffs, no property tax increase. That is off the table, not happening. The council's not going there. The mayor's not going there. It's not going to happen.
But is there any other way to raise money?
We cannot let, we need Albany's help. We cannot let Washington and Albany off the hook. I've been saying since day one that an international migrant crisis is not the responsibility of a municipality to manage or to finance. It's not our job to manage a migrant crisis. And frankly, Washington and Albany have really just hung us out to dry, and now the bill is due, and we desperately need help. And we're hoping that they'll come and help us out.
So let me ask you this question. The mayor has been singing this same song for over a year, and it has fallen on, you should pardon the term, deaf ears in both Washington and to a lesser extent in Albany. I mean, the governor did come up with $1 billion in aid in the last budget. Obviously, there's a new budget in January. So here's the question. Do you think that he proposed these, what appear to be draconian cuts to the NYPD as a wake-up call to scare people in Washington and Albany to finally come to the table?
It's certainly possible. Look, I see the numbers. I know the numbers. There are gaps there. However, we've got record reserves right now that we're not really tapping into. Also, what we're seeing is the city economy has proven to be more durable and more resilient than anyone has expected. Tax revenues are outperforming even the most optimistic projections, and the city is doing okay financially. Tourism is back. Jobs are back. We're not in a place where we need these draconian cuts.
So why are we cutting?
It's possible possible that he's doing it to get attention of Washington and Albany because he's starting to feel like the boy who cried wolf because no one is helping us. And we need help from Washington and Albany. That's very real. But there are budget gaps here that we're going to have to bridge. I just think it needs to be done in a more thoughtful way because, Marcia, you speak to as many New Yorkers as I do every day. I don't know anybody that's coming up to you on the street and saying, you know what we need? Less cops. You know what we need?
I think you're right.
Right. No one's coming up to you saying, you know what we need? Less sanitation pickups. Like, this is just bread and butter stuff that the message that we're sending that we're basically pitting migrants against, taxpayers is not the message that we want. It's also not necessary.
But you see, I asked this question. So you and I both know that people are outraged today after the mayor proposed these cuts.
Right.
So the question is this going to foment anti-migrant sentiment because people are going to start saying, why should I have fewer cops to pay for the migrants? Are you afraid that there's going to be a backlash and it's going to have a bad effect here in the city?
Of course, and I think there's politicians who are licking their lips at dividing people. It's already starting, right? It's already been happening for the past year and a half, and that's not what we want. That's not what our city is about. That's certainly not going to help us get through this time. There are gaps that need to be filled. It can be done in a smart way. Going straight to cutting things like that affect public safety and keeping the streets clean is just a way to make a lot of people really angry, and it's just not necessary. And that's what the council has been saying, that there are more thoughtful ways to bridge these gaps, but we have to have a larger conversation about why we're here in the first place, and it's not just because of costs related to the migrant influx. There's a lot of stuff here that we've been warning for a long time, and now it's coming home to roost.
So do you think that the city exacerbated its problems by the generous labor contracts without getting any givebacks?
Look, I think a lot of those labor contracts were long overdue and hard fought, and we have to look. I think through COVID, people finally started to appreciate our city workers, and a lot of this is back contracts that they've been owed money for a long time.
Right.
But this wasn't a surprise. So, the cuts, I think, in some sense, we shook hands on a budget just a couple of months ago, and now some of those same priorities that this council fought for are back on the chopping block, and all the revenue and all the projections we were seeing back in June when we shook hands. It hasn't changed that much between now and November, so a lot of it is a little bit puzzling to us.
So could he have taken some of the money from the rainy day fund, which is flush, to offset
we think so.
The first level of cuts?
Absolutely. I mean, like I said, look, you want to use discretion when you're accessing any kind of rainy day fund because you're worried that it's not going to get replenished. Right now what we're seeing is the economy is durable and resilient. The city tax revenues are way higher than we thought they'd be.
Sales tax revenue is up?
Yes. It's going to be up over $1 billion over more than what was projected. So the city is doing okay. That's what reserves are there for. Reserves are there so that instead of talking about cutting cops and cutting sanitation, you dip into the reserves so you live to fight another day. And I think that would be the prudent thing to do right now.
Are there any other ways that you could raise money? For example, I know that the city can only raise the real estate tax, but the state can raise taxes for you. Are there any things that you would ask the state to do? There's like a mansion tax or increasing the income tax on people who have a certain amount of income.
Sure.
Things like that could help the city. And is that something that you think the mayor should be asking the governor to do when the legislature comes back in January?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Like, what would you like to see?
Some of the things you mentioned. The council is going to put forward a plan. We're doing a hearing on the November plan right after Thanksgiving, so we're really going to dig into this. And we're going to put forward a plan of revenue raisers, that things that we think we can do to raise money for the city that we cannot do without Albany, but that is not going to hurt middle class and working class New Yorkers, but we can't do it without their help. So we really need all levels of government in on this. New York City pays a lot of money in taxes back to Washington, and right now we're being hung out to dry, and it's wrong, and I'm not going to give up on that.
So, but don't you think, but see, there's like sort of a fine balance for you, because at the one hand, if you say, okay, let's have Albany raise some of these taxes, you're still going to get some taxpayers who are saying, why should I have my taxes raised to pay for these people who are coming here? And I just wonder about the balance.
Well, that's why I think, sure, I think that's why the messaging is so important. Marcia, we have to understand, we're not only here because of the costs related to the migrant influx. We're here, honestly, we're really here because the COVID stimulus money is finally running out, and the migrant cost has just exacerbated that. But if it was just the migrant cost, we would not be making these cuts.
So were you surprised when the mayor, the former police captain mayor, proposed the biggest headline of the whole November plan was the reduction in cops. Did that surprise you? And do you think that he's going to have to pay the price at the election box when he runs for re-election? I'm confident that once the mayor's side finally acknowledges the revenue that we know is sitting there right now in the city coffers, that this would be reversed. I think it's a showing that look, everyone knows that the mayor cares about public safety first and foremost as a former cop. I think this is a way for him to say, look, this budget is serious, these gaps are serious, but this council is going to fight tooth and nail to make sure that that money is recognized and that those cuts are reversed. And also, we have about 30 seconds left, but doesn't this also mobilize the unions to go to Albany and Washington and demand the same thing you are? It
should. We need all hands on deck here. I mean, the senators and the Congress people who represent the city of New York, they need to be held on the hook here too.
All right, well, we're going to have to leave it right there for now. But our conversation continues right after the show on our streaming channel, CBS News New York.